good enough representation at the leadership level, but somehow we have been unable to achieve, let's say, the two-thirds gender rule and other gains that are meant to ensure that women are empowered and heard, and of course their needs are met because they are getting representation at the levels that matter. Now, when you look at Tanzania, that's a very good example of a woman who rose into leadership by virtue of being placed at the right position. That is Samia Suluhu, the current president of Tanzania. After the death of President John Pombe Magufuli, as per their constitution, she rose into leadership. But get this, in Kenya, it wouldn't be as easy. It would take the deaths of so many people before, let's say, CJ Philomena Mwilu actually rises to a position of acting president as we await an election, and we all know how that goes in terms of how we vote for women. Now, with us, we have an all-woman panel this morning that's going to help us delve deeper into this discussion and figure out why we're not doing so well, and perhaps also highlight some of the gains that we have made in terms of women empowerment and women in leadership. Now, in studio, I have Gloria Oroba, who's a youth policy analyst. Via Zoom, joining us is Waiguru Kiai, who is a social change advocate. And also at our I&M City Center studio, we have Abshiro Halake, nominated senator. Welcome to the show, ladies.
Asante sana.
Okay. I've just highlighted the situation in leadership, and I'd like to start off with Senator Halake. When you look at the situation here in Kenya, and like I said, it would take the deaths of so many other male leaders for, let's say, CJ Philomena Mwilu to act to the acting capacity position. Why do you think we're so far placed from leadership? You as a leader who is in active leadership right now, explain to us why it is such a problem.
Thank you very much. I think we've made a lot of progress in Kenya. We shouldn't really beat ourselves up too much. That being said, the issue of inequality and discrimination against women is not just in Kenya. While I'm not excusing it, what I'm trying to say is that women all over the world have always have been discriminated against. The playing field is not level, and therefore there's a long way globally for women to attain, especially political power and other in other spheres of leadership. But that having been said, of course, in Kenya, we have one of the best and most dynamic constitutions. We have provision within our Constitution of Kenya 2010 for not more than two-thirds rule, not more than two-thirds of any elective and other positions, leadership positions, to be occupied by one gender. So I think this is one of the reasons why we have these problems, because the conceptual framework, the legal frameworks have not been enacted, and so then it becomes very difficult for women to actually to get the accelerated lane into leadership that would have been if we had the legal and other policy frameworks in place for women to have the opportunity to attain leadership, as it were. You mentioned how Honorable Samia Suluhu has risen to the helm of Tanzanian leadership, and I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate her. We're very proud as women. We feel like this is in the region, at least, while we condole with Tanzanians and condole with the family of the late President John Pombe Magufuli, we are very happy that at least it went to a woman. So we congratulate her as women of East Africa and women of Kenya, and on my own behalf. But that having been said, this is why as women we've been fighting for legal frameworks, for constitutional frameworks, for policy frameworks that will give us an equal chance. Look at what happened there. It is the constitutional provision that gave her the opportunity. If that constitutional provision was not there, then she would never have attained that leadership. So I think it's very important that we fix the lacunas in law. especially with regards to the 2/3 gender rule. And we're hoping that within the BBI process, this is going to be fixed and this is going to be rectified, as it were. And bearing in mind that there are provisions to have, opposite sex for even at the devolved governance level. That way, then at least we know it won't take too many people to die for women to attain significant power to bring the change and to serve the country at the level that matters, as you said.
Gloria Roba is with us here in studio. Gloria, you've heard what we've said. It doesn't even have to be death. Let's talk about these other leaders being incapacitated, God forbid. But then that is all what it would take for a woman to rise to the helm of leadership. As a woman, how does that sit with you? And what would you attribute to this difficulty in women being empowered politically or in terms of leadership?
I think that we have to wait for an unfortunate situation for women to actually get to the highest offices. It's sad. And,
yes.
And one of the things that I believe we should start sort of cultivating is a culture where we are intentionally trying to get to those highest office, not through unfortunate situations like death or incapacitation or being impeached, but also just, running for office, running for, I mean, how many presidential candidates do we know in Kenya that have, how many female presidential candidates can you count in Kenya, other than Charity Ngilu, Martha Karua, I mean, literally a handful, you understand? So, and the thing is, before we even talk about the environment and the circumstances and how difficult it is for women to vie, we as women actually have to have an intention to change that status quo. So it starts with us.
Yeah.
We have to approach this subject in a way that, despite the situations, the terrain politically that is not very conducive for women, what am I as Gloria Roba doing to change that status quo? The first thing, of course, obviously, is to take up those positions of leadership. Actually, put yourself forward and say that I believe I have certain leadership skills, and so therefore I'm going to try my hand in politics.
Yes. Gloria, Senator Halake has given us her perspective. She is in leadership. You yourself, as a little bird told me, have political ambitions, right? So you're trying to get into it, if I am not lying. So could you tell us, as you go through this journey, what are some of the things that you see might be the things that other people who are ahead of you have had to face that you think need to actually change so that women can have a better chance at rising up in leadership?
Yes, I am actually running for office come 2022. I'm running for Member of Parliament of Bobasi constituency in Kisii County. One of the things that I will tell you I'm facing, the challenges, is that in Kisii County we actually don't have any elected members of parliament who are women. And so therefore, or rather, we only have one elected woman, MCA, and other than the women rep, we don't have any other elected women in Kisii County. So, of course, the first challenge that I am facing personally is having to convince my community that actually women are leaders and they can be trusted with that capacity of leadership.
How's that going?
It's very difficult. It's very difficult because the cultural understanding of the Kisii County is that, or rather the Kisii traditions is that leadership is for men. But I'm very glad that over the period of devolution that we've had, there is an understanding that women are actually capable of leading. And I'm very happy with the by-elections that are ongoing in Bonchari, because this is the first time that a political party, actually a big political party associated with big players in that industry, had some faith enough to field a woman candidate.
Okay.
Yeah, so for me, I feel like as much as we are really talking about the challenges and the things that we are facing in terms of women in leadership and particularly in politics, I think we've made certain strides. And I mean, the journey will definitely take much, much longer, like so many other years. But then I think we also have to acknowledge the fact that we are in 2021, and particularly for me in Kisii County, that we have accepted and we have started to look at women as leaders.
Okay, Waruguru
Yes.
Kiai, you are a social change advocate. What sort of social change would you hope to see in this country that would actually materialize in things such as the two-thirds gender rule being realized? Because even with the judiciary rebuking Parliament, calling for its dissolution, that was not enough to put fire under the feet of our leaders to ensure that this initiative is seen through.
I see, or I would want to see a scenario whereby, as society, we believe in the leadership of women. We have so many women who are leading in different spheres, both in the public and the private sector, who are winning in their respective fields, creating policies, effecting change. But hardly do we recognize their contribution as being important in churning out our economy, in churning out policies that are really, really positive as far as the movement of our country is concerned. We rarely get to ask this simple question. Can we see her? Do we see these women in their respective fields contributing? And then do we believe in these women? Sometimes it is very unfortunate when faced with leadership challenges, or when we are discussing about what women can do in the public service or even in the private sector, and we hardly admit to ourselves as society, and this is society being men and women, we hardly admit to ourselves that we have the capacity as women, we have the capacity to lead, we have the capacity to effect change, and we are just as good. We have so many questions, the howevers, the buts, can they do it? But what I would love to see, and what is the ideal situation for this country, to make it easier for the running of this country, is a scenario whereby we see the women for what they are doing, we recognize their contribution, and we place them right in these seats, right in these spaces of influence, both in the public and the private sector. We cannot, unfortunately, run this country and expect economic growth, expect economic changes, mostly in this era of COVID-19, if we are still not seeing and recognizing the contribution of women in business, in leadership, in politics, in the SME sectors. We have, and we are praying for the ideal situation to be very practical, that we see these women, we put them in spheres of influence, we listen and we respect their contribution, and most importantly, having the faith within ourselves that we can actually wake up in 2022 and vote for these women for both elective and nominative spaces in both the Senate and the National Assembly. It can be done, but it begins with a very deliberate and intentional change of attitude amongst ourselves. If our mothers do it, if our mothers run homes, if our sisters are running our businesses, and if our wives are able to transform our communities and do all these things, then why can't we believe in the potential of these very same women whom we call mothers and whom we call wives, to then become presidents, to become MPs and senators? It is indeed possible, but we need to have a deliberate change of mindset, perceptions, and attitudes as far as women in leadership is concerned. Thank you.
Halake, you pointed out what the BBI has for women, and of course with the situation right now, there's a huge assumption usually that women are taken care of because they have the women rep positions. There's that hope that perhaps there would be a deputy governor or nominated into office, but we could hope for better. What does the BBI have for women that you feel would make it good? Tell us more, because you had actually pointed out a few things earlier on.
Thank you very much. First of all, one of the things I'd like us to move from is to treat women as a project on the side, as opposed to a mainstream, as opposed to the largest population, more than half of the population. So again, I think when I look at what BBI has for women, first of all, I'd like to look at what BBI has for the entire population, because the entire population has more women in it than perhaps men in it. In our case, 51 to 52% of this country are women. So I think earlier on, when I talked about the legal frameworks and the policy frameworks and legal provisions and these kinds of things, it's because I know both Waruguru and Gloria have challenged us as women and have challenged themselves, and I like that very much, that we should also step up and that the society should also change. But before that happens, and I'm wearing my legislator's cap here, before that happens, sometimes you need something to force you into that. You need something to force you into it and force the society to put the women at the helm of leadership so that the women can showcase their leadership skills, and so that then that change of mind can happen because it's being modeled by a woman in leadership, or because the behavior is being showcased, the leadership is being showcased by a woman in leadership. So the reason why, of course, as a legislator, I'm looking at the legal frameworks, the policy frameworks, the constitutional provisions, is so that then, because mind change takes time, because mind change sometimes happens over decades, then having something in place that would then push us, force us to put women in leadership. And let me take an example of the nominated positions, for instance. Because of that provision, women have actually been pushed into leadership. And I remember Gloria asking how many women have put themselves out there. We can count the number of women who have vied for presidency. And there's a good reason for that. But through the nomination process, a lot of women, I am nominated myself, were able and are able to showcase their leadership skills and are able then to run for office going forward. I know quite a number of women. In my own party, there is Honorable Naisula Lesuda, who was a nominated senator. Now she actually is an MP for Samburu West. So now, one of the things then I advocate is that, first of all, as first order of business, let's put the right frameworks in place, let's obey our constitutions, and let's make sure that we give them women a chance. That the mind change will come,
yes,
especially if we are watching a woman in action. She is demonstrating her leadership skill. She's modeling the behavior that other younger women can watch and learn from. So these are some of the things that we need to do. But within the BBI has the provisions, as you know, to provide opposite gender rule, so that at the devolved level, we have, if let's say there's a governor, the deputy should be, if a woman governor, the deputy should be a man. If a man governor, the deputy should be women. The woman reposition that you mentioned will be done away with, but it'll be taken to the Senate. And I know a lot of women were a bit concerned about that because the woman rep position has some little cash for what we call the National Affirmative Action Fund. That fund is a drop in the ocean when you compare it with the influence the women at the Senate will have for resources to be taken down to the counties and on equal vote. Right now, as we speak, I'm nominated. I can vote on procedural matters, but I cannot vote on matters that concern counties. But in the BBI provisions, it will be equal voting rights for women and for men, and therefore they're able to influence. They're able to influence the resources that go to health, which is what women care about, to education, which women really care about. All the social sectors will be taken care of. So again, we need to look at the big picture. The BBI is a big picture. It's a strategic document that is looking at, what can we do that will bring consequential
Senator,
change,
I'd like to bring
as opposed
in,
to
sorry
then
to
the little
interrupt
amounts.
you. I'd like to bring in Gloria so that she can actually chip in on the things that you're saying. You've talked about the provisions in the BBI, and of course those nominated positions and the women reps sometimes are looked down upon as things that are just handouts for women, and some people would feel that they should step up and be in the competitive races and actually earn their place. Gloria, what is your take on that, given the positives that the senator has highlighted in terms of you need to get your foot in the door and then you can change perspectives about what you can actually do as a female leader?
I think one of the things that we have to recognize is that as much as we are pushing on affirmative action towards women, we have to remember that affirmative action has to come with dignity and respect. And one of the reasons why I believe the women representative seat was sort of watered down and, you know, it was seen as a sort of handout was even the fact that it was coined that this is a special seat just for women. I do believe that the intention was to have an elective seat that would represent the agenda of women, in which case then, you know, automatically we would push for women to vie for it. But at the end of the day, when you look at the attempts that are being made by the drivers of this initiative, of the Building Bridges initiative, I think we have to appreciate there is an attempt, but we also have to acknowledge and be very factual about some of the losses that women are actually going to face if this referendum passes. I'm glad that my co-panelist has actually acknowledged that, you know, the scrapping out of the women's seat also is the scrapping out of the affirmative action fund. And so therefore, while we have the women representative seats, which had a budget, which had a fund that would push the agenda to ensure that our children, our girl child are actually going to school, to ensure that we are dealing with maternal death, to ensure, you know, all those issues that we are trying to push in the women agenda, then now when you move the women to the Senate, they are playing an oversight role, because that's what the Senate does. And as much as we would like to believe that they would have some level of control in terms of the funds in general, you do understand that the Senate does an oversight role in terms of actually bringing to book maybe what was spent in the past. And, you know, it's not necessarily what we would like to push on the women agenda. And the question that actually was brought about when we had these discussions on what are the wins and the losses for women in BBI is, when you put the women to the Senate, and yet we are saying that the cabinet secretaries are going to be nominated from the National Assembly, then what are you trying to say? Are you trying to say that only those, you know, you've automatically said that the few women who would happen to be elected in the National Assembly are those who are going to get a chance, and yet where we're trying to dump the women in the Senate, we are not going to consider them for positions such as cabinet secretary positions. But I have to acknowledge that the draft, the bill, by saying that they will progressively, actually, the wording was changed from progressively to shall, insists that if a governor is a male, then the deputy will be a woman. The question then we have to ask sincerely is, our current constitution, actually Article 81B, says not more than 2/3 of the elected members or appointed members will be of the same gender. And we still haven't managed to implement that. Yes. And actually the drafters of the 2010 constitution are the same drafters of this BBI amendment bill. So what security do we have on that? And I'm glad that some of the women, such as my co-panelists, have actually been beneficiaries of the nomination seats. And yes, I do agree that being nominated sort of brings you to the forefront in terms of elective politics, and it sort of prepares you to run for office. And actually that is ideally what the nominations should boost, that women are now in these spaces, either in the National Assembly, in the Senate, and then they're able to now start, you know, planning on how they're going to run. But when you look at the formula that the BBI is pushing on nominations, they are actually using population count as one of the basic ways to pick, meaning that if by chance, if I don't win my seat as a member of parliament in Bobasi constituency, but I have, let's say, 19,000 votes, then a lady from Wajir or Garissa who will have maybe 800 votes and maybe lost to 50, you know, they would not necessarily be prioritized because they are coming from a place where the population is low, and so therefore the numbers are going to be low, and so therefore they are further being marginalized from these nominations. So I think as much as we are trying to say that, yes, this Building Bridges initiative is going to assist the women and bring them to the forefront. Right. As women, just like men are out here insisting that they fight for what they believe they should get, as women, we should not accept to take what I would call their the leftovers. I think we should do better in terms of representing ourselves on these platforms, on these tables,
Gloria,
and we should push for
forms,
100% affirmative action with respect and dignity.
Yeah, what forms of do better would you expect from our localities, even those who are not in leadership or better placed like you, even from the local communities? How would you have women do better in terms of pushing themselves?
You see, I think as women, we already are conditioned to think that we shouldn't push too hard. Because if you push too hard, you're considered aggressive. And so therefore, if you push a little and you seem to have gotten a few things from the agenda that we are trying to push, then you basically are kind of like, okay, you know, now tumepewa hii, let's, you know, calm down till next time. When I say we should do better, for instance, I will use a very practical example. We have the by-elections in Bonchari, and being a player in that space, whether in the different political parties or just in that region, I decided and I chose that I have to completely pursue 100% that we have a woman as a candidate for that particular seat. And so when I say do better, it means that in our individual spaces, you do have some level of influence in your office, so you just have to understand that there are women who are looking up to you. And if, for instance, you are sort of holding back and saying that as a lady, I can't be seen to be too aggressive, I can't be seen to be pushing for the agenda so, you know, passionately, so I need to control this and that. Of course, we will have gains, but the progress of it will be so slow that it will take us up to another 20 years to actually have a woman president in this country.
Okay, Ms. Waruguru, I'd like your take on what Gloria is saying. We should push, we should do better, but then we come from patriarchal societies where assertive women are often frowned upon, and even those who are trying to get into political office will attest to a ganging up against them by other male, you know, political leaders, and some have actually to hide behind another male political leader to make it to whatever goal they want. What say you about that? And in terms of being more assertive and making it against those headwinds, what should women actually be doing?
Allow me to start by saying that Kenyan women are very aggressive. We, especially in the leadership sector, women are really trying, women are really putting in work as far as trying to get themselves out there is concerned. Perhaps the only difference that comes about is, you know, is the obvious patriarchal challenges. And I'll be very practical. In the era of COVID-19, I would actually bet that as opposed to women, most men had the luxury of having what we call, you know, polite meetings in their homes. It's a very practical example. We saw top-tier Kenyan male politicians having meetings in their homes, hosting delegations in their homes. Now that seems like a very simple thing, you know. It's just like a man inviting other men and women to their homes. But let's think about it. Do women of Kenya, mostly those in the leadership sphere, have the same luxury? That is not the same case, because years and years of patriarchy has continued to deny Kenyan women the same opportunities as men. I did not see women or more women coming out, having the same delegations, having the same meetings. And these meetings really informed some of the decisions that we are seeing now, even as far as BBI is concerned. So the point is, in as much as we want to say that women are being assertive, which they are, some of these resources that seem even not being, you know, like not being entirely important, really make all the difference. And perhaps the biggest challenge for us then, as women, would be to find creative ways of circumventing what patriarchy has done for years. And one of the main platforms that women can engage to circumvent this patriarchy is movement building. We are seeing now a very intentional decision by young women in politics and in leadership to have forums whereby they are movement building, to be part of teams beyond tribes, beyond politics, that then push their agenda both at a county and a national level. And this is really working to ensure that even as we have conversations around 2022 and beyond, we then can have consensus around what we want. We can even have consensus around the kind of people, the kind of quality of leaders we would want to see us, you know, being fronted by ourselves.
Right.
Now, that is not easy to do. but the beginning point is happening now.
Okay, Senator Halake, I'd like you to give us, I love that you are actually a woman in active leadership. I'd like your take on how you have handled some of those challenges that women face, particularly in a very patriarchal society.
Thank you very much. But before I do that, let me react a little bit to some of my panelists, my fellow panelists, assertions. One of the things, and I like how our guru is putting it, that it's not for lack of aggression that women have been held back. I think the women of Kenya have really tried their best. They have been actually pretty aggressive. But especially in the political space, where politics is about finances and resources, politics is about security, and with all the violence, there's certain, places and in a lot of places where violence is a political strategy for opponents of women. So again, I would like to dispel the notion that the women have just sat pretty, the women have fought, but the playing field hasn't been level. That is what it boils down to, both in terms of, the financial ability of women to really do these things. As you know, for instance, in the rural areas, the asset that most families have is land. Women are the tillers of land, 80%, but they're not the owners of the land. So they cannot really use that land to their advantage to take themselves to leadership or to other things, so to speak. I just wanted to say that. But in terms of how I and people, women in the political sphere handle the patriarchy and what have you, really, what I can say is that we've come a long way. It is not the same as what, a few years ago. But that having been said, patriarchy is still alive with us. In my county, I come from Isiolo County, and I'd like to thank the people of Isiolo because they actually chose a woman to be their senator. And for that reason, I think I come from a place that really values leadership of women, and I look forward to them accommodating more women into leadership. I myself, and I think when women demonstrate their leadership, when women apply themselves, they would definitely be noticed, and patriarchy then starts to break. And this is why I think, why I believe even the nominations do give the women an opportunity to actually break down the patriarchy, because then you're demonstrating. I am, for instance, the chairperson for the Center for Multi-Party Democracy, which center is the umbrella body for political parties in this country. The reason why I was able to actually vie, because for that I ran for office, vie is because I was already on a platform within the Senate as a nominated senator. So I think one of the things that we need to now do going forward, of course, is to put ourselves out there for us women. But we're going to demand that our political parties give us an equal chance. We're going to demand that our constitutional and legal frameworks are not discriminating against us and are eliminating all forms of violence against women, for instance, are ending discrimination for us. And that is why even within the BBI process, all the provisions that were proposed by the women. And as Waruguru said, women are organizing themselves. They are building movement. The women agenda, for instance, brought together all the women from all spheres of Kenyan life to put proposals and a memorandum to the BBI process. So the women are working, and we are going to look forward to make sure that we, as women, we put ourselves out there, yes. And I like Gloria's attitude that I'm going to go for it, I'm going to put myself out there. If nothing else, I'll learn and I will succeed, and she will.
Okay.
It's a good approach.
Yes.
But that having been said, let me just, as I conclude, there's a lot of things that are still stuck against the women.